Hey guys, Sam Leverson here with Edina Realty, always joined by Shane Hoffman with Edina Realty Mortgage. Today we just wanted to kind of talk about inspections and also an FHA or VA appraisal. A lot of people kind of get them mixed up, think that they're the same, but they're not. Now that the market is starting to slow a little bit, we're seeing more inspections.
Right.
Like, wow.
The normal
Right?
world, how we used to do things, right?
Glad that we can get back to this pace of a market where our buyers can go in educated and really kind of work on getting some things fixed.
Right.
But so inspection versus appraisal, different. Two different purposes. Our inspection is solely for maybe some items that we might be able to negotiate to get fixed or negotiate in price. But the appraisal is going to be more so around the loan.
Right.
Nice thing is some inspectors, my inspectors especially, do know what is going to come up on the VA and FHA appraisal. So that's the nice thing about doing the inspection up front is that you can get some of those kinks worked out before we have to have it re-inspected, because usually the buyer is going to be paying for that. Yeah, what are some misnomers
and I think, to your point about going back to inspections again, I mean, it's just that peace of mind for the buyer, if nothing else, right? So even if you're doing some sort of pass-fail for the buyer, at least that they know they're getting into a solid house, they've had somebody look at it, a professional. Not that me or you walking through a house isn't going to notice some things, but we're not in that line of work. So, I mean, that's just kind of nice. But, from the appraisal side of things, so, I mean, for example, if you had a cash buyer, you would not need an appraisal. They might get an inspection, but they're not going to get an appraisal because the appraisal is definitely on the lending side. So really the appraisal is, I mean, it's for two people. It really is for the buyer, but it's also for the lender because that is their collateral for the loan, right? So they're wanting to make sure that they have a solid property that you're buying. So it's not just always about value, it's about the condition. So of course they're going to attach a value to it, and that is a big thing, but the condition is also a part of it. But I would say more so on the FHA VA side, to your point. So
has happened on conventional, can attest.
Yes, for sure. But I mean, FHA and VA are definitely more strict.
It's a government-backed loan,
so a little bit more strict on the
think
actual
about how the government works. They want to make sure that they're not.
But I also don't want there to be a misnomer that it's impossible to get a VA or FHA loan too. It's usually just a couple of things that they kind of look out for. One that's really the biggest one by far is chipping and peeling paint. So this is an older house that might have been built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, the lead-based paint thing. If they see chipping and peeling paint, it's not that you can't get the loan, it's just you're going to have to work with the seller to get that scraped and repainted before we can re-inspect and make sure it's okay.
But what happens in the winter, because we have winters here, and it's really hard to paint? What would happen in that case?
It wouldn't, really. So, and that's where I think listing agents have to know that that's going to be a thing. If you're going to list, FHA as a financing option on the MLS and make that one of the loans that you're going to accept, they need to take a look and make sure that there isn't chipping and peeling paint. Maybe you get that done in the fall before you're going to go live in the spring or something. But it just wouldn't happen really. Another one that we see, I mean, they look at health and safety probably things a little bit more than they do on conventional side. So health and safety would be like a trip hazard, like a chipped sidewalk, or something like they can trip on, that type of thing. Or the other big one we see is like handrails. And again, this is probably an older house, but maybe there's some 3 or 4 steps down to a basement that doesn't have a handrail. Okay, again, it doesn't mean you can't get the loan, but a handrail has to be installed. And you're talking about a few $100s.
It doesn't have to be permanent. I didn't say that.
So with those things, though, if they do come up, again, I just want to reiterate that it's not that you can't get the loan. It's just something has to happen now. We need to go re-inspect the property to make sure those things are taken care of. Now, the sidewalk thing might be a little bit tougher, but like a handrail or chipping, peeling paint, those are pretty
9
minor
times
things.
out of 10, it's going to be the smaller kind of cheaper fixes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like we're going to be gouging
Right.
the sellers.
Right. Now, if there was some foundation thing, well,
That's a different story.
the buyer might want to know about that anyway.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
like I don't know if I want to move forward. We've got a bad
Well,
foundation,
and again,
you know,
that's something that would have come up in
Right.
your initial inspection.
For sure.
So
Yep.
that's probably where we would have been like, bye,
Right.
we're out.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a little
much.
bit much.
Right.
Or even a roof. How'd that happen?
yeah,
A month ago?
yeah.
Feels like, yeah, probably a month ago.
Well, and that one, and you know, we had another agent that had a conventional deal fall apart because of a bad roof.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, appraisers know kind of roof shelf life almost, you
Yeah.
know, and it was really at the end of its life, and the lender did not want to lend on it.
This
So,
wasn't even, shingles were newer, but half
Okay.
of the,
so that was a good transaction.
yeah,
It sounds
half
like.
of half of the roof was like caving in. So
Yeah.
there was that.
Right.
Something, it was
Minor.
that, yeah.
Yeah, real minor.
Is that the awkward like angle where you could like, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Again, we did an inspection.
Right.
And that's something that came up.
And that was that was the tough part about this spring earlier, I thought, was just the people just waiving inspection side
Right.
of things. It's just, I mean, I
Right.
get it because it was so competitive, but I'm happy that we're at least a little bit of a slowdown, and we're seeing a lot more inspections again.
Well, and another reason, I've actually had a few people ask me like, do we really need an inspection? Well, it's not just for negotiation purposes and like, tell us what's wrong with the house. There's
Right.
going to be something wrong with every house.
Yeah.
But also that's to be expected. I always tell people, you're doing this to get to know like the guts of your house and how it operates. It's especially for the first time home buyers, it becomes an educational piece.
sure.
How does all of this work? What am I getting myself into?
Yeah.
But also, I can't remember where I was going with that. So there is also that.
Well, no, I think so. To your point, though, on the educational piece, I remember when we bought our house, and the inspector was awesome. Like to walk through all the mechanicals and just how they work. And we're going from a townhouse to a single family, you know. So
Yeah.
And I've been in the business a long time, but it doesn't mean I know how to
Right.
you know, work all these things
Right.
or whatever. So that part was just awesome, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part was
Gosh.
worth it to me. But
What did I say right before like the educational piece? Another.
it's not just for negotiation, but it's also for something.
Yeah, I don't know where I was going
Okay.
with that, but inspections are very important, and I'm very glad to see them start to come back.
Well,
but
you know what you could talk about a little bit though is that I've seen as a couple different strategies around would be pass fail or a smaller time frame, you know,
And
that kind of thing.
non-refundable earnest money
Right.
too, to kind of compensate for that risk that the sellers are taking. I really only had 2 people waive inspection this past year, me being one of them, but I've been to 1,200 inspections. So I'm not an inspector, but
Right.
I was comfortable
Sure.
digging through the house and figuring everything out. But yeah, as far as how can we win in a competitive situation with an inspection, there's a few things you can do. You can do all of them together or not. But you can do a pass-fail inspection. That's just meaning we're not going to be asking the sellers for any reparations or concessions. We just literally want to do our inspection for that informational, educational purpose, but also with that, it is still contingent on the inspection. So let's say the roof
Right. Yeah.
was caving in. We can still back out of the transaction without any repercussions, unless in a super competitive situation, if you were willing to do this, is giving part of your earnest money up as collateral. So, hey, we are willing to make half of our earnest money non-refundable in the case that we back out on inspection. If you were to back out at any other point, I mean, you're going to be losing all of your earnest money anyway. So,
Right.
plus it's like, what's the risk? Usually the bigger things we can kind of catch. The hard part with the roof on that one house was it was at a weird angle, so we didn't catch that during the showing.
Right. And you're not climbing up on
Yeah,
it during a showing.
exactly. We are limited with
Right.
what we can do in
Right.
showings.
Right.
But then the other piece to that is with a pass-fail inspection, we're not having to deal with all the negotiations. So usually that's going to take maybe 1 to 2,
Sure.
potentially 3 or
Yeah.
4 days.
Right.
So traditionally, your inspection was about a 10-day period, 7 to 10 days. Sometimes longer once you start getting into rural areas, and then you have to do well inspection,
Yeah,
septic, all that kind of stuff. Those are separate inspection contingencies as well, but we can really start to dwindle that time frame down to 3 to 5 days. Are you comfortable with just testing for radon after you move in?
Right.
That's really going to be like a $900 to $1,500 fix if your radon is high. Like, are you okay
Right.
with installing that yourself? And most of the time people are like, yeah, that's fine. That's just drop it in the bucket. But it's more so those big things that we want to look for. So if they don't want to do radon testing immediately, then we can go from 5 days down to 3 days. And then usually my inspectors can get them in within a day or two. And then we just send over the removal of contingency
Right.
amendment. So,
And when you think about that from the seller's perspective, I think part of the fear of an inspection is this long, drawn-out process,
Yeah.
where they don't necessarily know that
Yeah.
they've really sold it.
Yeah.
They don't tell you get through that. So to shorten that window, I think just makes
Yeah.
you a little bit more competitive,
Yeah.
a little bit more attractive.
then less stress on their part. They only have
Yeah,
2 days to stress.
Right, right.
Versus 10 days of, are we going to have to go back on the market? Then how does that look for us on the sell side?
Sure, right.
Then you're also looking at having to disclose that information as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So it can get a little sticky for the sellers, but if you can get it done as a buyer, it's absolutely worth it.
Right.
Yeah.